Hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. I hope you have a relaxing and enjoyable time listening to the stories I'm about to share. If you'd like, leave a comment below with the city you're from and the time you're listening to this story. I might even tell a story related to your city. Wishing you a wonderful day. I searched my parents' names on the dark web. The videos I found were horrifying. When my friend first introduced me to the dark web, I was amazed at how such an unknown thing could house some of the most illegal things on earth. Up until today, I had only used it for learning how to code and commit small crimes, but after the horrifying videos I just found, I don't think I'll ever use the dark web again. I first met my best friend Alex when a little bit after I got into high school. My parents had moved us to a new town and I had no friends. It was lonely at first, but I got used to it. We moved because they were paranoid after many murders occurred in our town. I thought this was weird, moving across the country over that, but I let it go. The reason Alex and I became friends so quickly was because we both had a shared interest in the internet and everything it had to offer. I was a gaming addict and a Tier 3 Pokemon subscriber, while he was more of a coder and developer. 2 years later, we were still best friends. But now we were much older and smarter. Alex had discovered the dark web, and he was obsessed with it. He pretty much spent every hour of the day on it, searching through anything you could imagine. There was nothing wrong with this, but one search he made was the biggest mistake of his entire life. I remember waking up to dozens of text messages from him one morning. This wasn't normal. Alex wasn't a very social person, and it was very hard to get words out of him. I opened my phone to see what he had messaged me. "Dude, Jack, you have to come over right now. This is important. Jack, please wake up. This is urgent. Where are you?" These were only some of the messages, but the rest were very similar, all urgent, and that I needed to go to his house immediately. My parents were both at work still, so I went over to Alex's house. When I arrived, there were 4 cop cars parked in front of his house, and there were dozens of people in news vans standing out front. I made my way through the crowd, and Alex's mother told the police to let me inside. I could see tears rolling down her cheeks as she opened the door. "What's going on, Mrs. Gonzalez?" I asked. "Alex is missing," she said, as she started crying. My heart sank. How could this happen? He had just texted me earlier that morning. That was when it hit me. What if he was trying to warn me? What if his text messages were related to his disappearance? Still in shock, I walked up to one of the detectives in the kitchen. "Is Alex going to be okay?" I asked. "Of course he is. He's going to be just fine. We're going to find him very soon," one of the detectives responded. Something about that response was off. It was like I knew he was wrong. Deep down, I had this slight feeling that I wasn't going to see him ever again. I remembered the text messages, however, and pulled out my phone to show it to the detective. He texted me this morning. "What if this has something to do with him going missing?" I said swiftly. As he began reading them, his expression quickly changed. It was like it got worse. He told me they needed to keep my phone for now to investigate the text messages and said they would give it back to me later. I stayed around the house for a while, not just because I missed Alex, but because I wanted to comfort his parents. They cared about me a lot, and it hurt to see them like that. His mother couldn't stop crying. Eventually, however, I went into Alex's room to see if I could find anything that might give a clue about why he went missing. I searched through everything, but I found nothing. Then I noticed something. Alex's computer was on, but his monitor was turned off. I looked for the button to turn it on and hit it. As the screen lit up, my heart sank. He was on the dark web. Obviously, this was normal, but for some reason he had dozens of different tabs open. I knew this part wasn't normal, so I closed the door and locked it, and began going through them. At first, it was all pretty usual for him, but then things started to get weird. He had a tab open that was an article about a murder that had happened several years ago. The article said that it was a woman who was found dead in her apartment. Her body was mutilated, cut up, and covered in acid. I nearly threw up reading it and seeing the horrifying pictures of the crime scene. Not wanting to see any of it anymore, I switched the tab just to reveal another article about another murder. Confused, I quickly went through the rest of the tabs he had open, and they were all the same thing. They all were about some type of murder or crime. The one that stuck out the most to me, however, was one about a murder that had happened 2 years ago. At first it seemed pretty normal, but as I read further, I realized what it was. It was about the murder of our neighbor that prompted us to move away. Confusion quickly swept over me. How did Alex know about this? I never told him about it because to me it wasn't that important. I figured it must have just been a strange coincidence. But then I saw the last search he had made on his computer. It was my last name. Horrified and confused, I quickly stumbled out of his room and back to the living room. "Is everything all right?" Alex's mother said, sniffing away her tears. "Yeah, I just need to go home for dinner," I responded. On the way home, so many questions and thoughts filled my mind. Why was he searching up my last name? Did he think that I had something to do with this? That must have been why he was texting me so frantically that morning. If only I could just explain to him that I didn't do anything wrong, but I couldn't. He was still missing, and I had to find out why. When I got home, I raced to my room and slammed the bedroom door shut and got on my computer. I loaded up my Tor browser and turned my VPN on. I knew what I had to do. I began typing in the letters of my last name, becoming more nervous after every letter. When I finally hit enter, nothing happened. It was just a blank screen. Confused, I refreshed the page, but once again there was nothing. But why did Alex search this if there was nothing? I thought to myself. There must be something out there. I was getting ready to close the tab, thinking I had run into a dead end when suddenly the page started to load. It took several minutes, but finally it loaded to reveal hundreds of videos. Immediately, I knew what they were. They were murders. But why did they show up when you searched my last name? I considered just stopping right there and turning back, knowing the horrifying things I would see if I continued on. But I couldn't. I knew this had to be why Alex went missing, so I clicked on the first video. As it started playing, I saw what looked like a woman strapped to a chair in some sort of basement or something. I quickly recognized who it was. It was our neighbor from 2 years ago. I could tell, because she had the same heart-shaped tattoo on her neck. She sat there for a minute, struggling, panicking and screaming for someone to help. However, suddenly, 2 figures walked into frame. At first I couldn't tell who they were, but as they turned around to face the camera, my heart sank. It was my parents. My father was holding a knife, while my mother was holding a small scalpel. They paused for a moment before they started what was the most horrifying 5 minutes of my entire life. I watched as they cut her into pieces and listened as she begged for mercy, screaming the whole time. Blood filled the room as she took her last breath. When the video ended, it quickly went to another, revealing the exact same room and chair I had seen before. I was traumatized by what I had already seen, and I knew I couldn't watch any more of it. My parents were murderers, and I now knew the real reason we moved away 2 years ago. I knew there was something off about that, but I just never could have imagined that this was the horrifying secret that they had been hiding from me. This whole time, I thought Alex was trying to accuse me of being responsible for these murders, but I was so wrong. He was trying to warn me. I scanned through more of the videos, each in the exact same room. I was just about finished, ready to go to the police so that I could tell them about what I had just seen when I noticed something. There was a new video uploaded today on the website. I quickly clicked on it and pressed play to reveal what looked like a man this time, strapped to the chair. He had a sack over his face, and I couldn't tell who it was. Once again, however, I saw my parents walk into the frame. My father walked up to the man and pulled the sack off his head. At first I couldn't tell who it was, but then I realized who I was looking at. It was Alex. I need to remind you that the deep web isn't something to take lightly or mess around with. Don't get involved, even if the invitations sound incredibly tempting. I applied for a deep web job. I don't think I'm the first. Hi, my name is Jeremy. Recently, I got laid off by my horrible boss, found a website for deep web jobs, and applied for house sitting. I also recently read Chris's shifts, and I think we applied for the same job. Mr. Salazar emailed me something along the same lines. I'll paste his email here. Your application has been accepted. Thank you for applying to the house sitting job. You will stay at the house from 12 a.m. until 4 a.m. and you must follow these rules. Your money will arrive at 6 a.m. after your shift. Always, no matter what you hear or see, stay in the bedroom. Either don't bring your phone, or if you do not turn it on. Even if you get a notification, I will not email you during your shift. Arrive at 12 or a little before 12. If you arrive past 12, do not enter the house and send me an email. From 12 until 1, you are allowed to roam the house, but make sure to be in the upstairs bedroom by 1. Turn all lights off, lock the doors, and close the blinds. This can happen anytime during the night. If you hear loud music from the camera room, put on the hazmat suit we have provided, enter the camera room, walk to the security desk, do not interact with the security guard, and turn off the music from the iPod on the desk. Make sure to do this fairly quickly. From 1 until 2, clean up all clothes in the bedroom and hang them up in the closet. If any clothes have blood stains, put them in the trash quickly. Make the bed. If there are more than 3 sheets, throw away any extra. If you hear a knock at the window, hide under the bed until the entity has entered and left the room. From 2 until 3, put the hazmat suit back on and walk into the downstairs area. If there is a man watching TV, turn the TV off and ignore what the man does. If there is a woman cooking in the kitchen, then turn off the stove and ignore what she does. There is a bathroom connected to the bedroom. If you hear the shower turn on, knock on the door 3 times, no more, no less. If the showering stops, it was done correctly. From 3 until 3:33, lay in bed and close your eyes. Do not fall asleep. Make sure to pull the blankets up to your neck and make sure they stay there. From 3:34 until 4, your shift is complete and you are allowed to roam the house until 4. Do not leave before 4, and do not leave more than 5 minutes after 4. That is all. Your shift starts tomorrow night at 471 Pedersen Drive. Sincerely, Mr. Salazar. I don't know what this means, but having read Chris's posts, I think I'm ready and I can survive. I'm going to type this out after my shift is over, if I survive. I entered the house and looked around, just as Chris had said. It looked old, but you could live in it just fine. The kitchen and living room were in pristine condition and looked like they were bought yesterday. I walked up the stairs, walked down the hallway, and turned right just before the camera room, entering the bedroom. The room had a king-size bed in it, with clothes and bed sheets scattered around the room. There was a door off to the side of the room, which I assumed was to the bathroom. The nightstand next to the bed held a small digital clock and a printed paper of the instructions. The clock gave a small beep, signaling my time had started. I bent down and picked up a couple of pieces of clothes, varying from bras to underwear to hats. I hung them up in the closet and started to get bored, until I found a gray striped shirt with a large crimson stain on it. I immediately threw it in the large garbage can in the corner of the room, and continued with my work. I was picking up the last piece of clothes, ready to make the bed, when I heard 5 slow, hard knocks on the window across from the bed. My blood ran cold. I dropped the clothes I was holding and crawled through to the small space under the bed. It was silent, until the door slammed open, and a woman fitting the description Chris gave entered the room. "I know you're in here. You can't escape. I'll find you eventually." I held my breath for as long as I could. She started to get angry and slammed her frail hands on the nearest things around her. She screamed in anger, wanting only to trap me in this house. Eventually, she left and slammed the door behind her. I got up out from under the bed, quickly collected the sheets, and made the bed, making sure to throw away the extra 2 sheets. Only 2:45? I thought. Then came the loud music from the room next door. I calmly but scaredly put on the hazmat suit and opened the door. I cautiously stepped out into the hallway and saw, down the stairs, a man watching TV. I opened the door to the camera room slowly and saw a man, if you can even call it that, sitting in the chair. He had rotten, dead skin and sat with such a hunch. His back was almost at a 90-degree angle. I walked over to the desk and spotted the iPod. "Keep calm, Chris, keep calm," the guard repeated to himself. I gave him a look of sympathy as he stared up at me with terrified eyes. I grabbed the iPod and turned the music off. Chris covered his ears and kept repeating that same phrase. I walked back to the bedroom, just in time for the clock to give a small beep and turn to. Let's be honest. Chris is dead. The house has trapped his soul and forced him to work there for eternity. The reason I signed up was to find a way to release these trapped souls, and I think that the entity has something to do with all of this. I kept the hazmat suit on and walked down the stairs. The man was sitting on the couch watching a cooking show on the TV. I walked over and observed him. He had polished hair, combed over to the side like he was a rich person. He had a nice suit and tie on, and nice pants, but his face looked like it had been rotting for years. The bone was showing in more than 3 places, and I'm pretty sure I saw a glob of skin fall from his face. His laughs were hoarse and deep, like he didn't have any vocal cords. I turned the TV off, and the man froze mid-laugh, then melted into the couch seams. I shuddered and returned to my place upstairs. I entered, and took about 10 minutes to take the hazmat suit off, only to be met with the sound of a warm shower. I came closer to the bathroom door and put my ear against it. I heard a lady humming lightly. Knock, knock, knock. The humming and water stopped immediately after the 3rd knock. It felt unsettling how quickly it became silent, but faintly off in the distance, I heard sizzling eggs. I quickly put the hazmat suit on and rushed down the stairs. The woman was cooking black eggs. She was like the man watching TV. Her apron and hat were pristine, spotless, but her skin was, although in better shape than the man's, rotting. I reached for the oven dial but stopped. "Please, please, keep it on, please," the woman repeated with a soft voice. Regardless, I turned the dial to 0. The woman melted, and I returned back to my bedroom. I thought this was going to be easy, but now I know what Chris felt. It is insanely scary being inside the house. 2:58. I pull the bedsheets up. 2:59. I get into the bed. 3. I close my eyes and get comfortable. The bed is surprisingly soft, and I feel as if I could fall asleep even if a train was running right above me. I thought about everything else I had seen that night, and that scared me awake for a few minutes. But it was a constant struggle to stay awake and conscious, knowing I would become like Chris if I fell asleep. Beep, finally the clock beeped, and the bed felt like it became stone. I climbed out, confused. I now had free time to walk around the house until 4. I checked in the camera room, and Chris had disappeared. I waited patiently for 4 to come, and when it did, I went home and started plotting a plan. Like many of you have suggested to Chris, tomorrow I'm going to bring a knife and a lighter. I'm going to try to stab the entity, and hopefully, I can survive. I'll update again tomorrow. Wish me luck. Oh Jesus, the plan did not work as planned. I'm hurt, but I survived. Let me tell you what happened. Just because many of you were asking, I went back during the day. but the house wasn't there. Like many of you proposed, I took with me a bear trap and a large knife. I entered the house and looked around. It looked the same, and I placed the bear trap right outside the bedroom door. Again, like you guys suggested. I tried unplugging the TV before the man appears, but when I went to pull it out, it was like the cable was part of the wall. It was completely stuck, and I couldn't manage to unplug it. The night started, and it went as normal as it could. But while I was in the middle of cleaning up the clothes, I noticed the bed had no hiding space under it. I had to come up with a new plan on the spot. My plan was, while I was sleeping from 3 to 3:33, and the entity was above me, I would take my knife and stab her. But now it looked like I wouldn't even make it to then. Knock, 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 knock. The entity signaled it's coming, and I panicked. Where would I hide? I grabbed the knife and crawled to a small space behind the door. I would have to stab her as she came in or was hit by the trap. Step. The entity came closer. Step. I tightened my grip on the knife. Step. A bead of sweat dropped down my face. Clang. I heard the sound of the bear trap closing and a high-pitched, demonic scream after it. I opened the door, and with all my might, swung at the entity in front of me. The knife slid clean into one of the entity's eyes, and black goo started spurting from the wound. The entity screamed, revealing at least 100 sets of tiny, sharp teeth. It clenched my hand in its mouth, and I screamed out in pain. We fell over on top of each other and rolled around for a while. I got scratched a couple of times and I stabbed her a couple of times. But finally I pinned her down and stabbed until I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that she was dead. I stood up, my arm bleeding profusely, and used a piece of clothing to wrap my wound. I didn't care about the rules anymore. I had just killed the thing running this place. I sat down on the bed and rested for a few moments. Throughout the rest of the night, nothing happened. Just to make sure, I stayed until 4 and left then. When I arrived at my house, there was a letter stapled to my door, written by Mr. Salazar. I'll rewrite what he said here. Wow. I have to say that I'm impressed. You managed to kill my best worker. It seems that you have already figured out my plan. The workers have normal shifts the first day, then on the second day their safe place is taken away. But you made it work. Come back to the house tomorrow, as if it was a normal shift, and we can discuss a reward. That is all. Sincerely, Mr. Salazar. I don't know what he will do or give me, but I don't think I have an option to not go. Wish me luck. A dark website allowed us to vote on whether or not someone dies. I chose wrong. I've always had a morbid sense of curiosity. And while that's not a fact I'm particularly proud of, I've always just jotted it down to teenage curiosity. To be honest, it probably started back in middle school, when people thought it was fun to send around horrible videos of executions and bizarre porn fetishes to each other on the MSN messaging site. Just mentioning it makes me feel old. These days there's an overabundance of these sites. Places to watch people die, blurry videos of car crashes, beheadings, and animal abuse. Of course, it's not something I actively seek out, but when I stumble across it, I feel compelled to just watch, to prove to myself that nothing can affect me. Though, for the truly gruesome stuff, one needs to visit the so-called dark web. As a guy who has fallen far behind in the advancement of technology, it absolutely baffled my mind that only a tiny fragment of the internet is available through a Google search. The rest, which makes up approximately 99.9%, is hidden and requires a special browser to access, with the help of a YouTube tutorial. I quickly downloaded the Tor browser and went on my way to search for the hidden aspects of the internet. It couldn't have taken more than half an hour of clicking on shared onion links before I stumbled across something that quenched my thirst for the horrible forever. The website itself was rather plain. Just a black background with a video player in its center and a chat box beneath. Within a few seconds of entering the website, the video itself had loaded and automatically started playing. What was depicted before me was a scrawny-looking man in his early 20s, strapped to a chair and covered in wounds. In the upper left corner of the video, a timer ran, counting up each second. 24 minutes and 14 seconds. Please stop, please. It was an accident, I swear, he yelled. A larger man entered the picture, a large needle in his hand, connected to an empty syringe. Without speaking a word, he stuck the needle as far as it could go, into the victim's abdomen. He let out a loud scream as the man removed the needle and plunged it back in. After a few stabs, the man grabbed a hammer and hit the victim straight in his jaw, shattering his mandible, leaving him unable to form any coherent speech. He let out a gargled whimper before passing out. I tried to forward the video, sure it had to be fake, but that's when I realized that it wasn't pre-recorded footage, but a live stream. 26 minutes and 12 seconds were the words that lit up the screen. The chat beneath the video went wild, calling out the victim as a pathetic excuse of a human being, demanding that the man continued the torture. A few seconds passed, and the chat was replaced by a voting form containing only two options: life or death. The votes were quickly counting, the bar for death rising rapidly. As much as I could stomach, I wouldn't be part of an act of murder, so I quickly voted for life. In the end, the results were displayed on the screen. Out of 200 people, the results were 95% for death, 4% for life, 1% did not vote. 10 people had tried to save the poor kid, but it wasn't enough. Without further warning, the man grabbed the hammer and started repeatedly hitting him, starting from the legs and working his way up until all that remained was a bloody pile of broken flesh. I sat speechless, staring helplessly at the screen as I noticed that my camera light had lit up. The video player vanished, and in its place 10 smaller boxes popped up, all displaying people from various places around the world, all being unknowingly filmed by their own webcams. To my absolute horror, one of the boxes showed my bedroom, and myself wearing a terrified expression. It quickly dawned on me that these were the people who voted to save the poor kid. Who will be next, the message said as a timer counted down towards 0. A few boxes turned black, to which the chat responded with laughter, a hopeless attempt at escape. 3, 2, 1. 9 of the 10 pictures disappeared from the screen, including my own, leaving the screen occupied by a middle-aged Asian man, frozen in fear. We'll see you soon. Good luck. I let out a sigh of both relief and panic. I'd escaped unharmed, but not everyone was that lucky. Of course, I called the police, but by the time they could even look into it, the link had long since expired. I don't know what else I could have done, but it taught me not to look too deep into the depths of the dark web. I actually bought a mystery box off the deep web. One of the hottest trends on YouTube right now is ordering these random mystery boxes from complete strangers on the deep web and opening them on camera. I don't know why I didn't realize a clear majority of these videos are fake and staged for their scare factor, but I didn't. I thought it was a great idea and hopped on the bandwagon to claim my YouTube stardom that I desperately longed for. For those who don't know a lot about the deep web, it's simply a part of the internet that isn't accessible from your basic Chrome, Firefox, or Explorer search engines. You must download the encryption program Tor in the Tor browser for starters. It's not illegal to access this part of the internet, but since it is anonymous, a great deal of illegal actions happens here. The possibilities are endless. I grab my laptop I've had since I graduated in 2011 and download the required programs. I prefer to use my laptop over my desktop in case of viruses and such. My 7-year-old laptop is a little more disposable. I had a little Bitcoin phase a few years ago when it was blowing up, so I had a little saved already. It wasn't much, only 0.1 BTC, which translates to roughly $632 USD, but it was enough for what I was looking for. After the downloads were finished, I opened the browser and started my journey at the Hidden Wiki website. They provide a lot of useful links to get you started on the deep web. I scrolled through the warnings and gists of what it was and found the links I was looking for. Almost forgot, I muttered to myself as I grabbed the duct tape from my desk drawer. I cut a tiny square piece off the end and placed it over my webcam. Call me paranoid, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. I clicked on the first link and waited what seemed like forever for the page to load. It was another very plain page with a list of popular websites that you could scroll through on the side. I continued my search through the web links until I found a page dedicated to mystery boxes. I wanted to find one around $500 so people knew I meant business on my channel. These were relatively small, staying around the 0.0125 to 0.05 Bitcoin range. I was worried about being scammed. I decided to continue my search after a quick bathroom break. When I came back, I noticed my cursor was off to the side and was able to click on a link that must have matched the background color of the web page because I couldn't see it. I indulged in my curiosity and hit the link. I was taken to a pitch-black page with small white texts near the top. I'm selling one random package to any brave enough to receive it for only 12 BTC oboe. Only one. I thought to myself, I'll shoot my shot. I hit the small payment button and was asked how much I'd like to spend. I entered 1 BTC with fingers crossed. The payment went through without any hesitation, and I was instantly met with a chat box asking where I'd like my package sent. I know this wasn't a good idea, and I regret it to this day. But the other YouTube channels used their own address often, so I thought nothing of it. I gave them my home address. I waited over a month for the box to come in. 36 days to be exact. It arrived directly on my front porch and was wrapped numerous times in red tape. I set my camera on the tripod and adjusted it to show me in the box on this small wooden table. I draped a sheet in the background, so it looked a little more professional. I collect some gloves and scissors so I can bang the video out in one go. Hey everybody, welcome to tonight's vlog. Boy, do I have a surprise for you. I continue my monologue mentioning how I got the box and how much I paid. Without wasting further time, let's open this deep web mystery box. I grab the scissors and cut along the red tape. I make sure my gloves are on tight and I rip the box open. My brow furrows as I see just one book. Without saying a word, I take the book out of the box. I was pretty pissed I spent over $600 on a book. Well folks, looks like we got us a dud. These pages better be made of gold. The outside of the book was old and tattered, and it smelled of mildew and mold. I cracked the book open to the first page and glanced over the contents. It's an old photo album. Smells of old rot. Let's look at these pictures. I show the camera a view of the page's contents. It has 4 pictures on the first page, all labeled by days. The first picture said day 1, the second day 2, and so on. The pictures were taken with an old Polaroid camera. There were pictures of airplanes, random suitcases, couple of taxis, and some pretty shady motels. Looks like someone's old travel photos. I continue flipping through the pages. Every day was a different photo of nature or cars or trains. Day 18 held the oddest photo yet. It was just of a mask, handcuffs, a gag, and a bottle of some sort of drug, it looked like. These people have one hell of a fetish. I try to keep the video interesting. I zoom into the picture with the camera so everyone can see it. Around day 32, things started getting weird. There was a picture of a house, but not just any house. It was the house I grew up in, my parents' house. My hand covered my mouth as I gasped for air. How is this? I'm unable to form a sentence. I'm at a loss for words. Day 33. I turn the page and see a man and a woman handcuffed and gagged. I immediately expel the contents of my stomach as I see my own mom's scared and crying face and my dad, face first in a pile of what looked like black tar. Day 34. This photo is taken inside what looks like a vehicle. I focus my gaze on the dashboard where a small photo is barely visible. It's an old school photo of me. They're in my dad's truck. Day 35. Another house, but this one much smaller. The photo is too blurry to make out the details. My hands are trembling, and all I can hear is my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I flip to the last page. I immediately throw the book to the ground and run to the window. I jiggle the hatch frantically and throw it open. Without hesitation, I jump out and run to the neighbors. As I'm running, I turn around for a brief second. What I saw haunts me to this day. A tall, hooded figure stood in my room, looking at me through the window. He stood motionless before lifting his hand and waving. I screamed for my neighbor, who hurried me inside and called the cops. I sat and just cried. I cried out of fear for my life. I cried for my parents. I cried because it was all my fault. My lack of common sense got my parents killed, and I will have to live with that forever. If you access the deep web, do not release any personal information, even if people on YouTube do it. Most of it's not real. And always check your boxes. It would have saved me a lot of trouble if I would have noticed the box I received had no tracking sticker on it. It was hand-delivered. I was the star of a deep webcam for 40 days. Do you know that a person can survive without water for only 3 days? But Mahatma Gandhi was able to survive as much as 21 days without food. Those were things I used to know as a normal student in a small town. I know none of those things anymore. I just know about rage and feeling constantly hungry. I was in my last year of high school and working a part-time job so I could save money for higher education. Things were dull but mostly fine until an otherwise normal afternoon after classes. It happened in the light of day. I was shoved inside a vehicle with expertise. I never saw the faces of the men that took me. I never saw their van, stinking of old blood and rancid food. I could only see the blackness of my blindfold and taste the slight sweetness of chloroform before I lost my senses. When I woke up again, I was completely naked in a poorly lit room. The state I was in made me expect the worst, but there was no pain or bleeding indicating that kind of violence. It was cold, and there was a maddening dripping sound. Something was gleaming in the dark. As soon as I adjusted my eyes, I realized it was a knife. Drip, drip. The small room had nothing but an already dirty toilet, the knife, and a crack on the ceiling dripping slimy, slightly green water. The walls and floor were gray and featureless. A very strong light, like a camera flash, popped into my face, blinding all my senses with the shock. It disappeared after a moment, and I heard a voice. "We want to watch your suicide. Let's see how long it will take." They took someone unremarkable, frail, with nothing to live for. But now I had a purpose. I had to frustrate my captors. If they wanted to watch my suicide, I would be the most resilient person in the world. I wouldn't grant their wish. Back then, I didn't know I was being watched by a bunch of sick and twisted people who kept up with my daily misery in the comfort of their houses and their anonymity. I slept on the cold, hard floor. Food never came, and the only source of water was the murky leak on the ceiling. I drank it, humiliated. It tasted worse than shit, and I would know that, since I fed on my own waste during the first few days. The only indication that a day had ended was the blinding flash and the same cold, mocking voice telling me that they were surprised I had made it so far. I was so hungry. So hungry. So hungry. The room was getting hotter from my breathing every day. There was no proper ventilation. It seemed to be just enough to not let me die from carbon monoxide poisoning, a merciful death compared to the one they planned for me. I didn't know why they chose me. I still don't know. I never wronged anyone. I never excelled at anything to be a target of one's envy. It was just a purposeless act of evil. The fact that it was completely random made my hatred grow, and, with it, my determination. My stomach hurt beyond words. I was constantly sick from the putrid smells all around me. My body ached all over. My skin was matted and flaky, my hair falling from malnutrition. I grabbed the knife. I felt watched in cruel anticipation. Not today. Not today. I chopped off my left pinky and shoved it in my mouth before I could think too much about it. My own blood dripped on my chest as I chewed on my own bones. The crunching sound should be so sickening. My teeth should be hurting so much or even breaking, bone against bone. I should be horrified to phagocide a part of my own body. But I was just so happy to be eating. After that, I felt my body growing stronger every day. Like a member of the cannibal tribe on Papua New Guinea after ritualistically feeding on their departed loved ones. I laughed maniacally for hours at a time and trembled endlessly. But I was more alive than I'd ever been in that captivity. I rationed my food, my body wisely. I needed my right hand, so it was crucial to spare at least 4 fingers on it, but I was free to feed on my left hand. My toes were pretty much useless. I'd been dragging myself on the floor to move around anyway. But I didn't need to feed on myself for long. No more than a week after I first took a bite of myself, the voice after the blinding flash had something else to say. "We are selling you." The official story is that I miraculously escaped my perpetrators during their flawed operation to move me to my new owner. And by the time I had reached a neighbor and the police were called, they had already fled the crime scene. The investigation was kept under extreme secrecy, so I didn't make the world news. Hell, I only made the local news as local teenager mutilated by unknown men. Someone even donated me a prosthetic hand. The police were able to take down the website where my daily torture was being streamed non-stop. And just then I found out that I was a star. I laughed for days because everyone felt so bad for me, not knowing that the torture I endured was way beyond losing a hand and a few toes. I laughed for days because I know the truth no one else does. I know how, right when they opened the door to my prison, my body felt like it was possessed by a bestial creature, and before I knew it, I used superhuman strength to crush the bones of 5 men all at once, then eat their fresh corpses whole. I even licked the leftover blood from the walls before I opened the doors and headed to the closest house, dragging my bad foot. In that moment, I felt like I was the co-pilot of my body. The wheelsman was a voice screaming kill and devour. I could never escape if something hadn't taken hold of me. I'm not strong or even fast. I'd do anything to spend the rest of my life quietly, having my body and mind slowly heal and recover from a devastating trauma. The problem is that eating the raw flesh of my captors was the most pleasant experience I've ever had in my life. And while I've been chasing mercilessly all the monsters that watched my suffering for their own enjoyment, I'm too hungry. Their tainted flesh has not been enough for me, no, for me.